Rainbow Reflections, Book 2, Put Out the Fire. Chapter 12, A Will and a Why and a Wherefore. Ever since the Greater incident, Zin was on the lookout for Kaokat. They'd constantly be glancing out the windows to the forest beyond the school for any sign of a cat. But as November approached, it was as if nothing had ever happened at all. The second Tuesday of November arrived. Zin went to Magic Studies 2 with Ren and Sarala after breakfast, where Khurshid lectured about combining elemental magics. Hyaktu sat on the front desk beside him, occasionally demonstrating two magics at once. Eventually, the bell rang, signaling the end of Magic Studies. Zin got to their feet and left the classroom, watching the other second years go to magic channeling one room over. Zin wondered what they'd be learning, recalling Ren had said something about group channeling. "Well, it'll be a while before I learn that," Zin muttered. They turned away from the students, set on going back to the tower. Then they stopped in their tracks, remembering they needed to come up with an idea for the obstacle course task in Magic Channeling 1. They remained near the eastern building to the side of the pond and garden. "Might as well try some magic," they muttered. Zin took their wand from their pocket and held it up in front of them, but they didn't know how to use the magic from within them. They glanced around, as if expecting a fire to spring up for their use. "The lamps!" Zin gasped eagerly, their eyes landing on one of the lamp posts stationed around the courtyard. They hurried over to the lamp next to the Magic Studies classroom. The tall pole had an oval-shaped piece of metal hanging off the end of it. Like all lights at the school, the metal contained fire magic. Unlike the ceiling lights that turned on when detecting movement, these lamps brightened as soon as the sky darkened, even if it was a cloudy day. "I wonder if I can take the fire out of here somehow." They glanced around, but didn't see anyone nearby. "Here it goes." Zin lifted their wand and pointed it at the lamp. "Give me the fire stored in this lamp," they ordered. Nothing happened. "Give me the fire in this lamp! Give me the fire in this lamp!" The box at the top of the pole shivered. Zin watched as a stream of fire emerged from the metal, floating in the air. Zin stared in disbelief at the flames, not knowing what to do now. In the next moment, the fire died out in the light breeze. Zin shook their head. "No, I waited too long," they muttered. I need something to hold it." Glancing around, their eyes landed on the northern garden. They grinned and bounded across the courtyard until they reached one of the bushes. With much effort, Zin managed to tug a branch from the plant. "Gotcha!" Zin looked around for a new lamp, then hurried to the one by the magic channeling classroom. They shifted away from the window so the second years couldn't see them outside. "I hope they aren't watching me." Zin shrugged and focused on the lamp. "Whatever, I can't get in trouble for practicing magic. It's not like I'm hurting anyone, and these lamps need to be re-enchanted every now and then anyway." They therefore ordered the fire from the lamp once more. This time when the flames came flying out, Zin lifted the branch to catch them. The fire was soon flickering on the long stick. "I did it!" Zin breathed. Now that they had fire, they had to think of an obstacle course. They tried to remember what the fire students had done the previous year. I could make a wall of flames, then... I could make a fire tornado, and then maybe whizzing fireballs? Once they had a clear plan in mind, Zin pointed their wand at the burning branch they still clutched. "Make a wall of fire!" they ordered. The flames did nothing. Zin scowled. "Make a wall of fire! Why isn't it working?" They took a deep breath, trying to calm their irritated mind like they were in a meditation, trying to reset like the number 0. They focused entirely on the fire in front of them, seeing only the flames. "Make a wall of fire!" they growled, seeing a wall in their mind. "Make a wall of fire!" The flames surged up in the air with a roar. Zin sprang backwards in alarm, dropping the branch in surprise. The blaze not only formed a tall wall, but started moving towards the northern garden as well. "Oh no!" Zin gasped. They darted forward again, trying not to get too close to the flames. "Put out the fire! Put it out!" they screamed at their wand, their heart beating madly in their chest. But the fire continued to grow, catching onto some of the bushes at the edge of the garden. Soon enough, trees were glowing like beacons, the blaze roaring fiercely. At this point, doors were flying open all around the courtyard. Students were rushing forward, having seen the fire from whichever room they were in. Even Wave came darting from the library. "Put out the fire! Put out the fire!" Zin kept commanding their wand desperately. Zin didn't know if their magic did anything, but they doubted it. The other students, however, were much more effective. Water magicians use the water from the pond, dumping it on the flickering flames. Fire magicians lower the blaze for the air magicians to suck the oxygen from the fire more easily. Earth magicians dropped large stones on it. The fire was put out within seconds. The garden only charred on one corner. Zin let out a deep sigh of relief, their shoulders slumping as they stared at the scorched and muddy ground. The other students stared at Zin, some glowering, some awestruck, and some fearful. Zin could feel the heat rising to their cheeks, their mouth a firm line as they kept their lips pressed tightly together. "If you're going to start a fire, you better know how to put it out."
"You should focus on magic you can actually handle."
"You're so stupid." "I've never seen such a powerful fire magician before. That was really scary." Zin didn't respond to any statements, their whole body tense. They dropped their gaze to the ground, having no idea what to do now. Then they felt a hand on their shoulder and jumped. It was Hyaktu.
"Dad,
Zin stopped speaking, having no idea what to say. "Come with me," Hyaktu said briskly. He kept his hand firmly on Zin's shoulder, turning them away from the destruction. Most of the gathered students returned inside, though some remained in the courtyard to scoff at Zin's back as they went. Zin's legs were shaky. They couldn't focus, their thoughts jumping all over the place.
I'm in so much trouble, but I was just trying to do magic. Why am I unable to control it? What's wrong with me?"
Hyaktu opened a door and allowed Zin to go in. They'd been so distracted as they walked, they hadn't paid any attention to where they were going. They were in the small counseling office. Zin automatically headed for one of the doors on the right, which led to a tiny room with only 2 chairs inside for a private counseling session. But Hyaktu steered Zin away and directed them towards the door leading to the admin hall instead. Once in the hallway, Hyaktu led Zin to the far left where the admin office sat. They entered the wood-scented room. A desk sat in the middle with a big mirror on its surface. 2 other tables sat in the back corners, while several chairs were beside the door. Hyaktu closed the door once they entered, then grabbed one of the chairs with his free hand and dragged it to the desk in the center of the room. Zin sat down numbly, Hyaktu taking the chair behind the desk. A rigid silence surrounded them for several long moments. Zin practically held their breath, their leg bouncing nervously. They could feel their father's gaze on them, but they continued to stare at the desk in front of them, observing the patterns the wood made. "Zinovis," Hyaktu finally murmured. "What happened?" Zin didn't have an answer.
How am I supposed to know why my magic doesn't work? Why it keeps exploding? Why it comes and goes? Do I even have magic? Is the testosterone still to blame for my magic failing?
A few moments went by, Zin not replying. As Hyaktu opened his mouth to speak, a knock sounded at the door. "Hold on," Hyaktu said loudly. But the door opened, and Zin glanced over their shoulder to see who had entered. It was Wave, striding to the desk quickly, his green eyes concerned. "Wave, I'm in the middle of—"
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Wave said, dipping his head apologetically to Hyaktu.
But I saw the whole thing happen, and thought I'd give you my report if it helps the situation. May I?
Hyaktu signaled with his hand to continue.
Zin had taken the fire from the lamps, then proceeded to make a giant fire,
Wave said.
They ignored that there were students in that same garden that caught fire, which could have seriously injured them.
There were? Zin wondered, panic shooting through them.
I didn't see anyone. Oh no, did I hurt them?
Wave must have seen the look on Zin's face, as he added in a gentle tone.
I don't think anyone got burned, but you were very irresponsible for not checking the area first, or getting an adult to supervise your actions.
He turned to Hyaktu and said,
I hope my report has provided some insight.
It has, Hyaktu murmured slowly. He paused, then said, I have to treat the situation as I would for any other student. Zinovis, you will receive a referral.
What?
Zin gasped, snapping their wide-eyed gaze up to Hyaktu. Hyaktu wasn't looking at Zin, instead focused on the mirror in front of him as he tapped along its surface. Endangering others because you didn't check the area, attempting magic that you cannot control properly, doing magic so dangerous it destroyed the plants in the courtyard. You could have been hurt. Other students could have been hurt. You've already had the fire blow up in class. You can't keep doing this. Zin's lip curled back as they hopped to their feet and knocked over their chair, their body tense with anger. You think I choose to have my magic blow up? Most of the time it does nothing. It's not my fault it got out of control. It's the testosterone. I don't think it is, Hyaktu said, keeping his eyes on the mirror. Even so, you know that your magic is uncontrollable. You should not be performing it without supervision. What you did today was reckless. Zin ignored the hot tears springing to their eyes. But I was trying. Students are allowed to practice magic outside of class. Only if they can control their magic, Hyaktu pointed out. We can't have water magicians flooding the school, earth magicians throwing rocks through windows, air magicians creating tornadoes, and we can't have fire magicians burning the place to the ground. I wasn't, Zin protested, trying to brush off Wave's hand as he placed it on their shoulder. Hyaktu finally looked up at Zin. Zinnivis, if there is nobody around, no students, no teachers, no Ren or me, what would you have done to put out the fire? Zin opened their mouth, but no words came out. Their vision blurred as the tears slid down their cheeks. What would I have done? Hyaktu sighed. He got to his feet and walked to one of the corner desks, which held a small printer. He picked up a thin bamboo slab. Once he had it, he sat back down and passed it over to Zin. Zin remained rooted to the spot, staring down at the referral in numb shock. You'll receive detention for the next 4 Seder days, Hyaktu murmured, during the martial arts club. Ren will teach those sessions. I'll see you in the art studio. You may both go. Zin left the referral sitting on the desk, not wanting anything to do with it. They left the admin office as quickly as they could, Wave leaving at a slower pace. Zin hurried down the admin hall until they made it to the door leading to the entrance hall, a swirl of emotions running through them. They paused as they entered the next hall, staring at the double glass doors that led outside the school. Bang! Glass shattered and flew as the doors swung open and hit the walls. A cool wind swept inside the building. Zin let out a yelp and jumped backwards, throwing their hands up in front of them. Dad! They screamed. Within seconds, Hyaktu and Wave were in the entrance hall, staring from Zin to the broken doors. Hyaktu stepped in front of Zin, walking cautiously forward with his fist raised at the ready. Glass crunched under his feet as he stepped along the wooden floor. Sweat ran down Zin's arms, their hearts pounding so quickly in their chest that it felt like it burst. After several minutes had passed, Hyaktu stepped into the grass beyond the school. Glancing around, he whisked his fingers through the air, almost as if he was trying to sense something. A few moments later, he returned to the hall. I don't think anything's out there, he murmured. What happened? Zin shrugged. I don't know, they mumbled. The doors just flew open and broke on their own. Wave frowned. Doors don't do that, he protested. Unless they were enchanted to do so. It wasn't me, Zin growled fiercely. I can't be blamed for anything else. I can't get another referral. You're right, Wave, Hyaktu said, Zin's heart skipping a beat. Only enchantments could have done something like that. But Zin has no idea how to do enchantments, nor is their magic anywhere near that level. This was not their doing, by a long shot. What could have enchanted it? Wave asked, frowning at the broken glass. Spirits cannot attack the school from the outside, can they? No, Hyaktu said as he shook his head. But perhaps the enchantments are in need of renewal. I'll be sure to put some more in place, especially over this opening, until we can get new doors up. But this is a security issue. What if something got in? Wave pressed. Hyaktu looked over at Zin in question. I didn't see anything, they muttered. There are enchantments within this very hall, Hyaktu added. And Wave, I am quite aware this is a security issue, and I will, of course, be looking into the matter. For now, Zin, you may go. Wave, please fetch Khurshid for me. Zin sighed and exited the entrance hall to the courtyard. A stronger breeze blew now, and more clouds had appeared in the sky. Wave pushed past them and headed directly for the magic channeling classroom, his long strides carrying him quickly around the shimmering pond. Here they come, hissed a loud voice. Zin flicked their gaze from Wave to 2 students nearby, who they recognized as the third years they taught in the martial arts club. Zin wiped the tears from their face, forgetting they had fallen. They attempted a small smile at the students, despite being far from a good mood. Were you trying to burn down the school? Sneered one of the third years. Zin shook their head, words refusing to come out. Are you going to shoot fireballs at us if we don't perform to your liking in the club? The other student asked, looking more worried than their friend.
Why would I do that?
Zin wondered, not responding to the students. They probably will, growled the first student. I'm not going back to that club, not if this lunatic is teaching. But that second year said they don't have magic, the other student mumbled doubtfully. He said the Saihans are lying about them having 2 magics. We all saw this maniac start the fire, the first objected. They've clearly got some magic. Zin had no idea what to say, but could feel the tears pricking at their eyes again. They remained standing in place, staring quietly at the third years. The students turned and left, scoffing at Zin. The bell rang, but Zin still did not move. They didn't know what to do or where to go. The second years came out of the magic channeling room, crossing the courtyard quickly to make it to plants. Wave and Kershid soon approached, but they merely went through the doors at Zin's back to join Hyaktu in the entrance hall. As the students walked by, some glanced in Zin's direction and pointed. Zin felt a strong urge to run and hide. But before they could back up into the entrance hall too, the students surged over. Zin was soon against the wooden door, keeping their eyes on the ground.
Zin, that was some crazy magic you did!
Raimugi exclaimed, their hazel eyes shining in awe.
How did you do it?
Murneo pressed eagerly. I guess they do have magic after all, Ailu, Ale grumbled to C3.
I'm telling you, they don't have magic. At least, they couldn't have had magic last year. Either way, they should not be enrolled here.
C3 growled bitterly. Why can't you give it a break? Sorella snapped at C3. We all saw their fire blast.
They all saw me?
Zin frowned and glanced up, meeting their sister's purple eyes.
We saw you from the window,
Ren replied telepathically, looking quite concerned.
Zin, what happened?
I don't know, Zin snapped, their lip curling back as the tears threatened to fall again. I don't know what's happening with my magic. I just lost control.
No, what happened with you and Dad?
Ren pressed.
Are you expelled now?
C3's loud voice cut into Zin's thoughts. Ren gasped audibly, covering her mouth with her hand.
No, you can't be expelled,
she cried out. Zin shook their head, still unable to form words.
You're not?
C3 asked, the disappointment evident in his voice.
But you could have hurt us all and—
Leave them alone,
Ren snarled, turning on C3 and whipping her wand out.
You should be happy you weren't expelled last year for what you did.
C3 eyed her for a moment, then shrugged.
We're going to be late to class if we do not hurry.
He then ran for the western garden, the other students trailing him. By the time the final bell rang for plants to start, Zin and Ren were alone. Even Sorella had left.
What did Dad do?
Ren asked, her voice echoing quietly in Zin's head. He gave me a referral, Zin said warily, dropping their eyes again.
Oh, Zin,
Ren whispered, and she flung her arms around their shoulders.
I'm so sorry.
The tears slid down their cheeks.
I just don't get why I can't do my magic,
they choked out.
Why does it never work? But it did work, Zin,
Ren countered, squeezing her twin tightly.
It might not have been what you wanted, but you managed some powerful magic.
Zin sighed, feeling drained. I don't know, they muttered, barely aware of what they were saying, their mind going blank. Magic isn't working out for me. Maybe it's just better to drop again and get it over with.
No, you can't,
Ren cried, stepping back and looking Zin in the eye.
Please, Zin, you can't drop school because you made a mistake. Making mistakes is how we learn. It's fine to make mistakes, especially if nobody gets hurt.
But it's not fine to be a mistake, Zin muttered.
Zin,
you should get to class. Without waiting for Ren to reply, Zin walked past her and headed for the northwestern tower. They heard her footsteps trail after them for a moment, but they soon came to a pause.
Zin, I understand if you want to be alone right now, but maybe try a meditation to calm your mind?
Ren suggested telepathically. Zin sighed at the thought of doing yet another pointless meditation. When will they understand that these meditations do nothing for me? They wondered, being sure to keep the thought to themselves. They didn't reply to Ren and continued walking, but she wasn't done.
Maybe your bad connection with magic has something to do with your family?
Her footsteps hurried forward once more to catch up with them. My family? Zin asked, turning around to face her with a raised eyebrow.
Yeah, your biological family, of course, not me or Dad,
Ren said, her face looking both concerned and excited as she reached their side.
Maybe there's something about your relatives not being able to connect with their magic well. Or perhaps they were, I don't know, cursed or something, so they couldn't do magic. It'd be worth looking into.
But where do we even start? Zin asked aloud. Ren tapped her pointed chin thoughtfully.
I'm not sure,
she replied.
But since Dad got you from an orphanage, even if he claims not to remember which orphanage it was, there should be some sort of record as to where you came from. Unlike me, who randomly appeared, she added.
I'm sure you'll be able to find out where you came from, too, Zin said with a small smile, attempting to cheer her up. Ren shrugged in response, then said,
Let's see if we can find your adoption paperwork.
But it's not in Dad's room, Zin pointed out. Then they grinned.
Ooh, maybe it's on the ship. Yeah, we can try there, Ren said. Come on.
Wait, you're supposed to be in class. Ren waved her hand carelessly.
It's just class. You're way more important. Let's take a look.
Zin snorted in amusement and excited energy coursing through them. Okay, time for adventure! The twins raced across the courtyard to the Tai Chi studio, soon entering the family tower. Once in the tower, they sped up the spiral stairs, their footsteps echoing loudly around them. Reaching the 6th floor of the tower, 2 doors appeared on the final floor. They unlocked the door to the left, which led to the bridge connecting the northern towers. Zin then dashed across the wooden structure, Ren on their heels. They reached the opposite tower quickly, unlocking that door as well. The siblings then entered the northeastern tower, the ceiling lights turning on with their movements. The tower did not have any levels, though it still stood at 6 floors high. The ship sat in the otherwise empty space, the tops of the masts almost scraping the ceiling. A small staircase led down about 2 floors, with a platform that allowed them to jump across to the deck. Once on board the ship, Zin dashed down the stairs to the 3rd floor. Ren, meanwhile, went to the steering wheel and searched for a button to turn on the lights inside the ship. The two then stood in the kitchen together, facing the narrow hallway with bedrooms on either side. Where would the paperwork be? Zin wondered.
Probably in the library,
Ren said. Her face fell as she thought.
Which means Dad could have stuffed it in any book. We'll have to be thorough in our search. How on Seder are we going to find it?
We'll find it, Zin growled, a fierce determination flowing through them. Then we'll find out more information on my birth family, or at least the orphanage.
Maybe we should ask Dad?
Ren suggested. Zin scowled and led the way down the hall and to the stairs at the back of the ship. Maybe Dad doesn't want us looking. Why else would he claim to forget the orphanage I came from? Why else would he hide the paperwork away?
I don't know. Perhaps because all these years we thought we both came from the same place when we didn't, Ren stated. So he didn't want us to know that.
I guess that's a good point.
But I wonder if Zorella was onto something, saying that he's keeping secrets from us.
The two reached the 2nd floor and turned into the library. The library took up the entire left-hand side of the ship, containing mostly bookshelves and a few chairs. Round windows looked out on the dark space of the tower. We're here, so we might as well look for ourselves, Zin said with a shrug. Besides, he probably wouldn't be happy to hear we're looking into our heritage. Ren frowned and made no response. The twins began searching the library, which was far from an easy task. Not knowing where the adoption paperwork could be, they decided to open literally every book. They had barely gotten through one shelf when the bell rang faintly outside the tower to signal the end of plants class. Are you going to potions? Zin asked. Ren shook her head.
I'd never make it in time. Besides, after your referral, Dad should expect me to spend time with you to make sure you're okay.
Zin sighed, almost forgetting about the referral.
Yeah. Let's keep looking, Ren urged, beaming at them.
Zin smiled at their sister, but it soon turned into a frown when she turned back to the 2nd shelf. The excitement of looking for the paperwork had dulled long ago, and the reminder of the referral didn't help. They slumped their shoulders and got back to work. By the time the bell rang again, the twins had gone through 3 shelves with no luck. But they didn't want to miss lunch, so they hurried out of the ship. They dashed from one tower to the next, ran all the way down to the first floor, reached the courtyard, and made it to the eating hall 5 minutes later. "Where were you?" a brusque voice asked the second they entered. Zin and Ren glanced to their left to see Sarala sitting at a table right by the door. She had her arms crossed over her chest, golden eyes narrowed in annoyance as she inspected the twins. 2 trays of food sat in front of her. "Ooh, you got us food?" Zin asked eagerly, their mouth watering at the sight of the fluffy bread on one tray. They moved to grab the roll, but Sarala rapidly snatched the tray away with a scowl. "This is mine, and that one is Ren's. Get your own." "That's not fair," Zin huffed. "Why didn't you get anything for me?" Sarala clenched her jaw and made no response. "It's because you two are loves, isn't it?" Zin grumbled. "Whatever, I'll be back." They hurried to the small line, leaving Ren to take a seat beside her girlfriend. Students pointed at them as they walked by, the fire incident burning bright in their mind's eye yet again. Zin forced himself to stare at the stack of trays, then the counter, and finally the food. They blocked out anything the other students might be muttering, though it was difficult. "Great. Everyone thinks I'm some insane person ready to blow up the whole school." Zin grabbed their food and returned to the table. The girls were chatting about the plants class, Ren looking quite disappointed she had missed out. Zin felt guilt seep into them. Just then, the door opened and Hyaktu entered. Catching quick sight of his children, he headed directly for them. Zin lowered their eyes, feeling ashamed of what they had done. "See you later." They hurried out the door to the courtyard, unwilling to face their father. Hyaktu frowned at them as they went by, but he didn't stop them. He was probably headed for Ren to ask why she had been absent from class. Zin went outside gratefully, glad to be away from the judging students and disappointed father. Zin's feet automatically carried them towards the bench by the willow tree in the western garden. They pushed through the plants, the air feeling damp as it began to drizzle lightly. They sighed at the thought of being out in the rain. "Though I guess I deserve it." They reached the bench and came to a stop in their tracks. Someone was already sitting there, taking up a good chunk of the seat. "Mint?" Mint glanced up at Zin, an empty tray on his lap. He lifted a hand to wipe away tears from his large green eyes.
"Hi, Zin,"
he mumbled, his gaze returning to the ground. "Are you okay?" Zin asked hesitantly, though they knew the answer. Mint shook his head several times, his tangled green hair bouncing around and falling into his eyes. "Do you want to talk about it?"
"Not really."
Zin shifted their weight from one leg to the next awkwardly. The drizzle turned into a light rain, though the droplets made no sound as they fell. After a moment, Zin sat down on the tiny bit of space left on the bench. Mint shifted aside more, though that made little difference.
"I'm having a bad day,"
Mint murmured, keeping his eyes on his large feet. "I understand that," Zin muttered. Mint glanced sidelong at them, almost fearfully. Zin sighed, knowing that he must have heard rumors of Zin's fire, if he didn't see it for himself. Zin dropped their gaze as well and kept their lips firmly shut. After a long moment, Mint spoke again, his voice so quiet that Zin could barely hear him despite the silence of the rain.
"My parents have high expectations for me. My brothers and sisters, they're so much better at magic than me. They all have important jobs, everyone looks up to them. But I'm..."
"Different," Zin uttered. Mint looked at them and nodded.
"They keep trying to make me more independent, to get me over my anxiety. I understand their point. I want to be independent too. It's not like I want to be anxious all the time, but I can't do it. I can't be the person they want me to be. You feel the same way, don't you?"
Zin sighed heavily, imagining their father's disappointed face. "Yeah, sometimes," they grunted. "Feel like I'm good for nothing. I can't do anything right." Mint nodded, sympathy in the green depths of his eyes.
"I feel that so much," he murmured. "After last year, when I told my family about the spirit attack and how you and Ren and Sarala all faced them, my parents were so disappointed in me. They asked why I didn't help my friends. I told them all year about you three being my friends," they added. "So, they thought I was with you the whole time and ran inside to hide, even though I wasn't with you at all."
"Oh."
"Anyway, they kept comparing me to all of you, saying they'd rather have a kid who was brave and selfless and...
Mint sighed heavily.
But I'm not. And after I failed my project for magic studies, they think my anxiety is getting worse and I'll never be able to make it on my own someday, and I wish they'd understand.
That must be annoying, Zin grumbled in agreement. It sounds like they don't even know who you are. Mint shrugged in response. And it sounds like they don't want to know you.
I can see why,
he mumbled. That's ridiculous, Zin growled fiercely, anger surging through them. Mint snapped his gaze to Zin, looking frightened and on the verge of tears. They should get to know the real you and love you for who you are, Zin went on, before Mint could start crying. Whether you're anxious or brave, selfish or selfless, you're you, not your brothers or sisters, and they ought to start realizing that. You're unique. Mint smiled lightly. He took a deep breath, straightening up.
Thanks, Zin. I needed that.
Zin grinned in return. You're a good person, Mint. And if your parents fail to see that, that's on them. You don't need to change to meet their expectations. And it's just one project. It doesn't define you or your life. You'll get there. You'll be independent one day, and that anxiety will vanish. Mint nodded several times, lifting his head higher as his smile broadened.
Yes, I can do this.
You certainly can, Zin agreed.
But what about you?
Mint asked, his grin dropping.
Didn't you get in big trouble for the fire?
Zin sighed, their eyes landing on a rustling bush nearby. They wondered if a bird was hopping around in it. The bush fell still as they replied, It's just one referral. It doesn't define me. It doesn't define my life.
Are you gonna be okay?
Zin paused for a moment, then said, Yes, I will be. Thanks, Mint. The two sat in silence, Mint eyeing Zin's food. Zin offered them a piece of bread, and they eagerly took it. As they munched away, Zin's eyes shifted back to the bush. They frowned as they caught sight of their father's face, peering back at them through the branches. Their lip curled back. What, are you spying on me again? Zin asked telepathically, not wanting to alert Mint to their father's presence. I want to see how you're doing after what happened, Hyaktu replied. Ren told me that she skipped class to spend time with you. I'm glad you're doing better. Whatever, Zin thought, not caring if their father heard them or not. Hyaktu lingered a moment longer. I'll see you in class. He soon vanished, the bush rustling lightly as he went. Zin scowled at the bush, then resumed eating. But the anger had returned, taking the place of their hunger. They offered the remainder of their tray to Mint, then claimed they had to get ready for Kung Fu, and rapidly left. Zin actually did go to the Kung Fu studio, changing into their uniform early. Ren and Sorella entered a bit before the bell rang, Ren coming over to Zin at once to see how they were doing. Irritated, Zin muttered they were fine, and asked what their father had wanted, but Ren merely repeated what Hyaktu had told them. The studio was soon full of uniformed students lining up on the squishy mat. Hyaktu and Khurshid stood at the front of the room, warming up the class together. Then Hyaktu took the blue sashes and Khurshid the purple sashes. The teacher switched each week. Zin sighed in annoyance at the thought of their father watching over them yet again. Of course, Zin could practice on their own, but they had intended to get help for their stick form. Not knowing what to do, they remained with the bulk of the blue sashes training the stick under Hyaktu's guidance. Ren remained with Zin, despite knowing the stick form very well that she could get the weapon to whoosh effortlessly through the air. Let me see your forms individually, Hyaktu said. Who'd like to go first? Ren raised her hand and darted forward. She performed the movements easily, her stick flying from one side of her body to the next as she moved through low stances. By the time she was standing feet together again, Hyaktu's only advice was to make sure she was sliding her feet and holding her balance. Zin then stepped forward wordlessly, the stick resting along their left forearm. Hyaktu nodded for them to start, so they bowed to open the form. Soon enough, they were grabbing the stick with their right hand and slicing it through the air with as much power as they could muster. They slammed the stick to and fro, trying to hear the whooshing noise Ren was able to create. But the sound was absent like the silent rain outside, Zin's body too tense as they hurried through. They finished the form a bit sloppily, nearly falling off balance as they went feet together once more, the stick back in their left hand. They could feel the heat rising to their cheeks as they did the closing bow. Ugh, that was terrible. Well, that was a quick performance, Hyaktu commented. You need to slow down. Define your stances and strikes more. Hyaktu walked over, standing a few feet from Zin with his own stick. Without a word, he went through the first few moves of the stick form, ensuring that each strike paused for a moment before he went on to the next part. Zin noted that, though the form seemed slower, it was still aggressive and powerful. And, of course, Hyaktu was able to make the whooshing sound with his stick. It definitely looks crisper when you do it, Zin grumbled when Hyaktu stood up after a few moves. Hyaktu nodded. When you're going quick, your form becomes sloppy, your stances rise, and you become really tense that you'd probably lose a grip on your stick if you actually hit something. But if you slow down, you can make sure you're moving correctly and hitting to the right targets. And you'll relax more too. Zin sighed. I guess. Go ahead and give it a try, Hyaktu encouraged. They nodded and performed again, pausing each move for at least 1 full second. But they couldn't get the same amount of power that Hyaktu was able to, and felt like they were now being too lazy with their stick. Relax power is a difficult thing to master, Hyaktu said, signaling Zin to stop after a few moves. It took me some years before I understood it enough to translate it into my forms and techniques. They'll never get it, sniggered a quiet voice off to the side. Zin sighed, recognizing Ael's voice at once. They did their best to ignore him, nodding silently to Hyaktu's words, though they had barely comprehended a thing he'd said.
They are too fiery to calm down,
C3 commented in an undertone to Ael. Zin could feel their lip curl back as they stepped away from their father. They moved off to the side to join the other Blue Sash students, taking several deep breaths as they tried to relax. Ren practiced off to the side, working on her jump kicks now. Zin was tempted to join her, but didn't want to feel more frustrated, and therefore stood in place with their stick dangling next to them. Who's next? Hyaktu asked the group. C3 stepped forward. He bowed crisply to Hyaktu, then did his own performance. His form looked much like Hyaktu's, as the boy took his time and paused each strike, unlike Zin. He's trying to rub it in, Zin thought bitterly. Just ignore him. Ignore him. Good job, Hyaktu said when C3 had finished. You've got structure and clear definition for each of your strikes. Zin stuck their tongue out at C3 behind their father's back, but it didn't make them feel any better. However, a few of your strikes are off target, Hyaktu went on. Go back to the beginning of the form for me. Hyaktu corrected one of C3's strikes that was meant to be to the body instead of the head. Zin turned away to join Ren, but she was done with her jump kicks.
Do you think we're ready to test?
Ren asked Zin, panting lightly. Zin blinked in surprise. Ready to test? For purple?
Of course for purple, silly,
Ren chuckled.
Oh. I'm nowhere near ready to test,
they thought. I guess, they lied aloud.
Great, let's ask Dad. Maybe there's enough time to test before the combatives,
Ren said, beaming. Zin's heart sank as she skipped the short distance to their father. She waited a moment as he critiqued Ael's stick form, then asked about testing. Hyaktu glanced from her to Zin, then back to her. He's not gonna let me, Zin instinctively knew. Ren swiveled on the balls of her feet and returned to Zin's side, much less enthused, though a smile still remained on her face. He's not letting me test, is he? Zin asked, their lips starting to curl back again.
He's not letting us test,
Ren said, pushing her glasses up her nose.
He said there's not enough time this class, but maybe next week.
Zin sighed and turned away from her, moving to the far side of the mat to practice their stick form step by step. Ren trailed after them, but drilled the self-defense techniques instead. I'm never going to catch up, am I? Zin thought bitterly, their whole body tense as they slammed their stick through the air. Their mood did not improve as Sarala had been able to test on the other side of the mat, earning her brown sash from Khurshid. The students applauded her, then Ren practically jumped onto the sweaty Sarala to give her a kiss. Zin swiftly looked away in disgust. Sarala's so much better at martial arts than me. And Ren, and even C3. Zin glanced towards Hyaktu as he nodded his approval of Sarala's new sash. I suck at martial arts, and magic. I'm just a disappointment, aren't I? Zin shook their head roughly, ignoring the pricking sensation of tears. No, I might not be the best, but I'm not the worst either. And just because I'm not good at martial arts or magic, doesn't mean I'm a failure. I'm like Mint. My strengths lie elsewhere. They sighed heavily at the thought, their eyes dropping to the mat.
I wish I knew where exactly. And I wish my strengths were with martial arts or magic.